Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. I also realize it may, depending on location, be morning, afternoon, so my apologies. Good afternoon and good morning to those of us joining us from different time zones. My name is Michael McCracken. I'm a digital admissions counselor here at St. Thomas University, and I want to welcome you to what will be the first of many virtual events here that we will be carrying out from now until essentially your time where you might be taking your first steps here on campus at St. Thomas. So we are very grateful to have you here in Fredericton virtually this evening. We will get started here in a few moments. For context, folks. We do have a number of registrants signed up for this evening's session, and we'll be sure to cover plenty of ground in a pretty decent amount of time over the next 50 odd minutes or so. But that being said, we're going to provide just a moment for folks to get comfortable, sit back, relax, and allow a few additional folks to join us in the virtual room of sorts. That being said, I can assure you that for those of you that are not familiar with St. Thomas, the Fredericton area, will be covering a little bit of components about both. We'll certainly be covering a number of components about the application process. Obviously, that is the nature of tonight's session. We'll also take some time to cover, opportunities that might exist in awards, whether they be scholarships, bursaries, what that might mean, the differentiators, all of that good stuff, and certainly more to come on top of that. Additionally, we'll also find time to answer your questions. So obviously, we're going to trudge our way through a few common questions, some FAQs, if you will, some pieces of advice and tips, not only relevant from our admissions and recruitment staff here at St. Thomas, but also from the experience of previous students that we've had to work with us and since arrived at STU. With that being said, I think we have a number of folks that have joined us already. So with that, we'll get started actually in the nature of tonight's session. So once again, if you are just joining us, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to kind of sharing a little bit more information, not only about St. Thomas, but about the application process, the scholarship, and even the bursary process on top of that, to kind of provide a better sense of whatever your own internal timeline might be. So if you are new to the world of Zoom, which I'm sure most of you aren't, there are a few ways to get involved in this evening's session. So obviously your camera and microphone will remain off for the duration of the session. That being said, if you're on a couch, a chair, somewhere in public, somewhere at a coffee shop or what have you, feel free to just tune in, and we'll definitely have time to answer your questions as well. So if you do happen to have any questions, you are more than welcome to pose them in the Q&A function. So if you have a Zoom toolbar that you've become familiar with, the little dual box that says Q&A would be the best way to ask your questions. That being said, if you do have a question, first of all, there's no such thing as bad questions here, especially when we're looking at a landscape like university, but you can pose your questions anonymously as well, and I'd be happy to field your questions one way or another over the course of tonight's session. If you are looking for additional means of staying up to date, staying connected, keeping in the loop about anything really STU related, you are welcome to keep in touch. Following the event, I'll be sure to pass along a couple of opportunities in which you can do so. But with that being said, we can dive right into things too. While some of you might be a little more familiar with the nature of St. Thomas and whatnot, I'll provide a quick overview of the university, and then we'll dive right into kind of a workshop almost of the application process, and even looking at the components of what goes into an application for admission, and then even further looking at scholarship and bursary applications as well. That being said, again, in case somebody is joining us a little later here, my name is Michael McCracken. That'll be the last time I say it, I promise. I am the digital admissions counselor here for the recruitment and admissions team here at St. Thomas University. And generally, whether it be myself, whether it be one of my colleagues, whether it be an admissions counselor, an admissions officer, or any other member of the staff, I'd be happy to provide additional details about. But overall, from an admissions counselor perspective, most admissions counselors on the team can offer a variety of services, and this would include obviously the program exploration side of things. So if you have a variety of interests, we can kind of help cater something that might suit your path a little bit, whether that be academically, professionally, some combination of the two, we'd be happy to help. Obviously, the admission part of admissions counseling comes with the application for admission. So if you need any kind of one-on-one servicing or insight or tips or questions to be answered when it comes to the application process for admission, we're happy to help. When it comes to scholarships and bursaries, obviously those are a very popular topic for a number of incoming students. We'd be happy to provide advising, insights, and a couple of best practices that might work in, leveraging your applications for something like an award down the road. and overall optimizing your STU experience, whatever that might happen to be. So whether that is getting familiar with campus, getting familiar with the beautiful city of Fredericton, that could be from finding a good place to find your own private place to study, to even a good place to grab a cup of coffee. Whatever your preference is, we're happy to kind of optimize that experience for you. So again, highlighting briefly some of the greater qualities I would say about St. Thomas. One thing that you can keep in mind, which is not only unique to us, but unique to us in the country, is that we're the only university in the entire country dedicated to the liberal arts in that offering. Now, I'll dive into that a little bit further and what that means, but that kind of dabbles both in our program offerings, the social sciences and the humanities, but it also looks further at how we offer it. You know, it's more than just really just trying to flash memorize information. We're focused more here about really identifying that transfer of knowledge and making sure that that's embedded not only in our services here, but also in our classrooms and so much more. In case you are a little unfamiliar with where we're located, that's more than okay. I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to get familiar. But we are located on the wonderful east coast of Canada, actually in the heart of the province of New Brunswick, we're the capital city, located in Fredericton, New Brunswick. So for a kind of a better shot, more relevant to the weather and the current conditions, that is what a typical morning is looking like right now in Fredericton, New Brunswick, folks. So it is a beautiful city that has a lot of great components of kind of the urban lifestyle associated with the city, but also a lot of that small town kind of kindred university town spirit as well. That being said, we are the provincial capital, as I've mentioned, and with that comes so many opportunities, not only when it comes to music, arts, culture, festivals, really just finding anywhere to enjoy yourself and whatever your free time might be. We also have a variety of walking trails, and that's paved, unpaved. If you need to find almost a bit of escape, you can certainly find that as well here. For anybody traveling to New Brunswick that needs to find some form of airfare to get here, we are just 13 kilometers away from campus, so that makes for a very quick drive when landing. What is nice to know too is whether you plan on bringing a car or personal vehicle to campus, STU tuition does include a transit pass built in. The city of Fredericton does have a very strong public transit system. So if you're looking to get from point A to a point B in the city, you certainly have those opportunities. And speaking of opportunities, with being a capital city like Fredericton, that provides a ton of opportunity, to be honest, whether that be in paid internships during the school year or even during your free time, work placements. We certainly have a wonderful alumni network that loves the city so much, whether they're from here or not, they might stick around. But then there's also community service, there's discounts, there's plenty of life culture opportunity here right in Fredericton, New Brunswick on top of that. A couple of figures about St. Thomas that are kind of our humble bragging points, if you will. 99% of our faculty, our full-time professors, hold the highest degree in their field. If you're looking for kind of a common example of what that might look like from program to program, let's say one of the highest degrees that you could earn in a field of psychology might be a PhD. So you're thinking that kind of equivalent for really all of your classes. So you're learning hands-on with some of the greatest minds in whatever field you might be pursuing. Additionally, over 10% of our student population does come from 35 different countries. So frankly, if you can think of any other continent but Antarctica, there's probably a STU student that has been here from a country or that is currently studying here. At some point in time, if you're ever checking out campus, we have a wall of flags. That's a really neat kind of feature that kind of idolizes and embodies the international culture here at St. Thomas. So it's a really well-rounded community of students, I would say. And then on top of that, looking back at not only the opportunity of meeting new people, but also having expert advice and insight from our faculty. The maximum number of students in our class is actually 60 students. That is some of the lowest class sizes and the smallest class sizes you can think of. And it kind of helps make sure that that transfer of knowledge is firm and in place. That being said, our average class size currently is 24 students per class. So depending on the school that you might be considering to join us from, that might actually be smaller than whatever your current class size might be. And again, you're learning from the experts. So makes it a very quick process to get to know people and feel confident in a classroom setting. So I've already cited it a little bit, but we do have a very strong offering in our variety of social sciences and humanities. And what really kind of drives the point on that is it allows for you to not necessarily worry about a one size fits all experience, but it rather allows you to almost pick and choose and cater a path that makes the most sense for whatever your postgraduate goals are, whether they be academic, career-based. We can help build a path there. So I could certainly speak to each of these nearly 30 programs to plenty of detail, but that being said, we've only got about an hour here this evening, so I won't go into much detail about our programs. That being said, there will be more info sessions if you're looking to tune in more about what these programs are, what some of the differences are. I know for a lot of students, they might not be familiar with a large majority of these programs, and there's so much to unpack. So out of respect to the programs, I'm not going to dive into any of the programs, but I thought it would be fair to allow students to get a chance to get a sense of what we do offer and what we offer well here. That being said, outside of our Bachelor of Arts with the nearly 30 programs situated within that, we also have an undergraduate Bachelor of Social Work. It's certain that there's certainly a need for social workers, not only here in Canada, in this part of Canada in particular, but the rest of the country, the rest of the world, frankly. It's a really strong growing field too. So what's nice about the program here is that students within their first 2 years of the Bachelor of Arts, so in their second year of study at St. Thomas, do have the ability to apply to begin in the Bachelor of Social Work, completing it in certain cases in as little as 4 years and being credentialed to go in the field afterward. That being said, we are looking at additional opportunities for, getting your hands dirty, if you will, whether that be in the field, whether that be in a professional setting, but experiential learning is certainly a component of not only our classroom offerings, but our students getting out and building their own professional experience all at once. So what is particularly strong here at St. Thomas is that we do have a paid internships program. So it's kind of combining what your academic interests are, what your career pursuits are, and really building that career development component of it. So 100% of our internships are either paid or provide students with credit toward their degrees. So one way or another, it is going to pay off. Students are matched with programs and organizations and paid internship opportunities that reflect what their interests are, what their academic interests are, what their career interests are. So it's very catered to really where you see yourself going and where you see yourself kind of workshopping your skills a little bit too. On top of that too, while I continue to provide a brief overview before we jump into the application process, certainly travel is becoming more of a common thing now. I know it's been a couple of years for plenty of us that haven't been able to travel as much. But that being said, if you do have any kind of travel bug that you want to explore, we do offer a generous variety of study abroad opportunities, whether it be a 1 semester or 2 academic semester international exchange. There's also travel study opportunities, which think about the best class trip that you could probably have in your life. That's kind of what the nature of a travel study course is. So a lot of classes might have the opportunity to visit countries based on where their studies are being situated in the classroom almost. So it's a really neat opportunity, and we could certainly talk more about that at a later time. For students, obviously thinking about student life and what that looks like here on campus at STU. Obviously, we have a very strong network of residences right here on campus, and even a couple for students that are looking to have that experience, but maybe a little bit distance from campus. And when I say that, it quite literally is the next block over. So there's a variety of housing options for students looking to have some form of campus housing option. With that, there's a variety of building activities, whether it be for socializing, getting together, working on your academics, having a paint night, having a movie night, doing kind of trips with your residents. It's a really great way to meet people from all over the world and kind of build a home with them in a meaningful way. Obviously, we do have a wonderful offering when it comes to our dining hall. It's actually located right in the center of our campus. It's pretty tough to miss. And depending on what your dietary preferences are, your needs, there's always going to be something on the table for you in a sense. So if you do have any kind of allergies, if you're vegan, vegetarian, halal, whatever your kind of disposition might be about food and your relationship with food, there's a good chance that it'll be well catered to here at St. Thomas. Obviously, support is something that we like to take pride in here as well. So whether it be some form of academic support, whether it be access to free peer tutoring or having access to counseling, success coaching, positive outcome kind of training here on campus, those are all accessible things to name a few. And then even for personal supports, university is certainly a different landscape for a lot of folks. And it's more than okay to admit that a little bit of additional thought, insight from actual campus experts is not a problem at all here at St. Thomas. It's accessible and it's very approachable, I'd be honest. Naturally, too, if you're looking for additional community options to kind of build your lifestyle here at St. Thomas, there are supports for academics and employments. There are personal and mental health-based supports. If you're looking to get involved, if you've been involved in high school, if you haven't really been involved in any kind of club or society or group before, this might be your opportunity, to be honest. Whether you're looking to perform on a stage or perform with musicians, and again, no experience required. If you're looking to get involved in athletics, if you're an advocate, if you're looking to volunteer on campus in the community with local youth, with local aging communities, whatever there is, there's probably something that you can do here in your free time on top of having a world-class education as well. That being said, there is a ton of information that we could dive into even further, but out of the nature of tonight's session, we're going to focus a little bit more about the first steps that you might be able to take. So naturally, the application process, not only for admission, but we'll also take a little dive into the process for scholarships and bursaries as well. So overall, this is kind of as simplified as a timeline as it can get about the idea of becoming a student, or at least considering becoming a student on top of that. So the first step is kind of in progress for you joining us tonight, and that is getting to know STU, getting to know St. Thomas. So a good thing to keep in mind might be, getting a sense of what our admission requirements might be. Meeting with a admissions counselor, which could be myself, it could be one of my many wonderful colleagues, could be attending a virtual event like this one and the other ones to come. It could be attending an in-person event like our upcoming open house. It could be doing a virtual tour, a campus tour, whatever kind of accommodation you need to figure out St. Thomas and figure out how you can see yourself here. We can make it happen for you. So feel free to keep in touch as well. Naturally, step 2 of this process is typically the application process. So the good news being is that applications for fall 2023 are now open. They actually opened on October 1st, which, depending on if you've met with myself or one of my colleagues, you might already be aware of that. If you have been accepted already, that's wonderful. Congratulations. The early bird gets the worm, all that great stuff. But that means that you're actually a part of the next step of being able to consider your application for scholarships or bursaries. Again, we'll dive into a little bit later, but if you need a deadline to keep in mind, the final deadline for scholarship and bursary applications would be March 1st, 2023. Pardon for the small typo there, but not to worry. Next steps would be obviously applying for residence. If you are considering living on campus, we do have a variety of living spaces. So if you were looking to have a guaranteed living space here on campus at STU, the deadline for that application would be April 15th. Making our way down the pipeline a little bit further, students looking to confirm their enrollment can submit their $100 non-refundable deposit by the May 15th soft deadline. That being said, if you have any questions about that, we can certainly keep in touch. And then generally speaking, in spring, that kind of makes it a little bit more real. So that would be when course registration opens up for incoming students. It's a really exciting process. Again, we're months down the road from that, but just kind of building a little bit of excitement. It's definitely a really neat opportunity to have your first crack at full academic independence and really actually choosing the courses that you want to choose and where you can kind of see yourself going. But going back to a higher level, we're going to look a little bit at the overall admission steps for, in this case, as much of our cohort is high school applicants. I'll also have a couple of speaking points too about students that might not necessarily have been a recent high school graduate or even a grade 12 student of a high school right now. We're definitely going to have some resources available for you as well. So the first step for everybody involved would be pretty much creating an account on our application portal. I can promise you it doesn't bite, it doesn't hurt. It's a very quick process, not only building your own account, but actually completing the application. It's as quick as ripping off a Band-Aid, and I promise you it's a lot less painful. If anything, it's a lot more enjoyable, to be honest. So by creating an account, you can just visit stu.ca/sign up to set up your future student account. This would give you access to your portal and all of those important things that you'll be looking at. Obviously, you can review our admission requirements by visiting stu.ca/admissions. So depending on where you might be joining us from, you can click on your home province if you are a Canadian, or your home country if you're joining us from another part of the world, in which case there should be options for that. If you have a tough time locating any kind of admission requirement, or if you have a specific admission related question too, I'll be sure to provide contact info so that way you can keep in touch with your questions. Naturally, step 2 about that would be building and submitting your application. I'll do a little bit of a walkthrough here in a moment, but essentially all you need to do is log into your account. And again, to access that pretty easily, it would just be stu.ca/my-account. From there, you can click start new application, submit the required information that would be associated with it. And then afterward, you can pay the $55 application fee. If you are from New Brunswick, we do have a rate where it is $40 for applicants within the province of New Brunswick, where we're located. And that would just be at the end of the application process. That being said, our application is an application process that you can save in progress. So if you are looking for additional pieces of information, if you need to take a couple of steps at it, or if it needs to be done over a couple of different sessions, then you can save an application in progress. It's no different than any kind of document you might have on your computer. Step 3 about this, following submission of your application, would be sending in your official documents. So if you are a Canadian high school applicant, you can send a copy of your transcript, or you can have your school send a copy of your high school transcript as well. The easiest place to have that sent would just be our email, admissions@stu.ca. From there, we can add it to your file and then update your checklist, so that way we can get your review moving forward. That being said, too, if you need for some reason a mailing address or a fax number, anything like that, an alternate form of getting a document to us, please let us know, and we can definitely provide additional information about that. If you are an international applicant, perchance, we may need your high school transcript. It might depend on your academic background, but your high school transcript can kind of be considered the standard on this. If you do have an education or a background that English is not your first language, we will probably require some form or other of an English proficiency test score. We accept a variety of scores, and all of that is available actually with our international admission requirements as well. So depending on if you've completed an English proficiency test in recent history, or if you're in the process of choosing one to take, then you can certainly double check that for a bit of a cross-reference. The St. Thomas University ETS, institution code is 0803. So international applicants who indicate they're permanent residents of Canada as well also need to provide a photocopy of their official permanent resident cards. So those are all things that we can definitely work on. And if anyone does have any questions about certain documents that need or need not be included, then you can definitely keep in touch with us as well. Also, for the official document side of things, if you are a transfer student, so if you've attended another university or college or post-secondary institution, or if you're a returning student to St. Thomas, or if you're a senior applicant, feel free to keep in touch with us, so that way we can ensure that all of your documents are arriving safely and they are all being kept on file for us. If you do have a previous post-secondary educational experience, we often require those transcripts as well. So whether it's a combination of some form of high school and then an early kind of start in a post-secondary environment, we can certainly take both transcripts. And then for an adult learner, it's more so the opportunity of sending in, a 1 to 2 page type letter, giving us a little bit of sense of your background and what you've been up to since your high school or your GED has been completed. But all that being said, we can definitely help on a student by student basis as well. So that being said, in light of not necessarily screen sharing for plenty of technical reasons, this is a bit of a visual walkthrough of how simple the application process can be completed. So these are all actually directly pulled from our application portal. So this is exactly what you would be looking at. That being said, visually, it would probably be a little bit more pleasing, as we had to kind of slice and dice a little bit to ensure everything fit in a proper manner. So the first thing that we'll need to know, obviously, is your program information. Using the most common example out of this, you would probably be looking at the Bachelor of Arts. Within that, you can highlight your subject area of interest. That being said, whatever subject area of interest you do indicate, that is by no means a declaration of your major. A really nice benefit to students of St. Thomas completing their studies here is that they don't actually have to declare their major until the end of their second year of study. That being said, I might not have even mentioned this. Most of our students actually graduate with a double major. That doesn't come at any additional cost. That doesn't come at any additional time constraint for that matter. It's just a matter of students finding multiple interests and kind of building in that program-based kind of pathway that makes the most sense for their postgraduate outcomes, whether it be in the professional world afterward, or whether it be carrying on school in one form or another. But either way, feel free to indicate whatever your leading subject area of interest is for the time being. If you're going to be enrolled as a one or another, most commonly this would be either a full-time student or a part-time student. So most of our students that do apply are full-time students. That means that more often than not, they're completing roughly 5 courses per academic semester. And they can be completing as few as 3 courses per semester to be considered a full-time student. Students completing 1 to 2 courses per semester would be considered a part-time student. So if you're planning on being a student full-time, then you can just say that you'll be enrolled as a full-time student. personal information. That's obviously important for us to be able to know who we are reviewing. So yeah, it would just generally be your first name, your last name, your middle name, your preferred first name. So if you do have a name that you prefer to be called by, then we can certainly meet that. And then on top of that, if you have a previous last name, if that's applicable to you, we can certainly take note of that as well as your birthday. From there, we will also be just taking note of gender, your first language, your primary language spoken, if you will, the province of birth. This is a Canadian-based application. So if you have an international application, then we might not necessarily require different things like province and whatnot, but overall the applications are very similar in nature. Again, this is more so for Canadian-based students, but we also do look at social insurance numbers that can be provided, and that is generally just for tuition tax receipts as well. Additionally, well, this is option. So whether a student has any form of Indigenous background, identity, family history, that could be status or non-status or anything in between, you're welcome to let us know. And we can certainly make sure that we can provide any additional resources or attention that might be associated with that as well. Naturally, we'd be looking for your mailing address. So that can be your country, your address, the city in which you're located, the province, if applicable. It could be the state if you're an American student, and even the postal code. Again, this would be more so for the Canadian application. International applications are a touch different, but nothing too major to be remotely concerned about, honestly. We'll also be looking for your primary phone number. That is in case we want to connect with updates or provide any information or news or anything like that. We'll also make note of if that's a mobile phone, if that's a home phone number, almost a landline. I know a lot of people don't have those, but we still take note of that if they do. And you can even provide a secondary phone number if there's another way that we can reach you by. And then on top of that, an email address. So that can just be your personal email address. I know sometimes high school students wonder if they should be completing their portal and building their application using their school email address or their personal email address. To be honest, it's at your discretion. I'll be frank in my experience that working with plenty of students at this point, using a personal email address might have its advantages. I know certain high schools or secondary schools remove their email access from their students following their high school or their secondary graduation. So to be safe and on the safer side, if you will, then maybe your personal email might do the trick. Also, we'll be looking just for, general parent, supporter, guardian, emergency contact information. So this would just be in the event if you've listed them as a contact, then we have a point of contact afterwards. So again, similar to personal information provided by yourself, this would also just be based on the contact that you're supplying on that. Now, this was a touch smaller, so if it's tough to read, then I'll be sure to highlight it nonetheless. But just to kind of go over things a little bit, we'll also be looking at your previous / current, if you're still completing studies elsewhere, educational information. So this would be your school name. That being said, we do have a database of schools in which previous applicants have joined us from, and some that have not been reflected on the system yet. So if your school is not showing up when you're typing in your school name, you're welcome to select just unknown school. And then there's actually a drop-down option too. So if you did select an unknown school in our database, then you're welcome to just type in the name and location of your school, and we'll be sure to make sure that reflects on file. There is a toggle button. So if you are currently enrolled at the institution, whether it be secondary, post-secondary, or what have you, you can certainly click that or unclick that if that's actually true to you. You can mention the type of school that it is, the start year, so the year that you would have began studies at this school, the end year. So even if you're not completed yet, and let's say your end year is 2023, you can absolutely put 2023. And then the degree / certificate obtained. That could be a high school diploma, that could be a GED, that could be a number of things as well. Additional information to keep in mind is your most recent school semestered. Again, that's not going to be anything remotely like a deal breaker in the application review process. It's mostly just for our kind of record keeping. So if you have, let's say, a school that is broken up into a fall semester, a winter semester, or even a summer semester and a fall semester, depending on where you might be studying from around the world, you can certainly let us know in that component. Have you previously been admitted to STU? Knowing a lot of folks in attendance might still be high school or secondary aged, you can just say no to that one. If you have been previously admitted to STU and you're tuning in, welcome back. It's great to see you, and we look forward to having you back on campus at one point or another. But nonetheless, have you ever been required to withdraw from any post-secondary institution, including STU? Now, that would just be a post-secondary institution, meaning any kind of college, university, trade college, something along the lines of that. So if you've had to withdraw for one reason or another from that institution, that would be where you could let us know. And then also, have you graduated before the current calendar year? That would also include graduation from, let's say, a high school or a secondary education. So if you have, then it's a yes. If you haven't, then it's a no. But it really won't make that big of a difference for the overall review of your application. And then if you are eligible for, let's say, a discount code, there's actually a component below where students can have their application fee waived. For more information about that, I'll be sure to cover that momentarily, but for the sake of reviewing the process, I'll keep making my way forward. There's also an optional long answer information section. That being said, it is optional. So it's as little or as much information you would like us to know about you. So overall, what are your reasons for pursuing university studies, whether it be a passion for higher learning, a career outcome that you might be pursuing, a certain postgraduate outcome you might be pursuing, whatever it is, we're happy to know about it. But it doesn't necessarily need to be an entire biography of your life's academic journey to getting to this point of application as well either. If you're involved in any current extracurricular activities, if you were involved in any extracurriculars before the pandemic began, you're welcome to list those there as well. Even if it's a bullet point form, we're happy to take a look at that too. And then if there's anything else that you would just like us to know about you, so if you have any, part-time or full-time work experience, any kind of achievements that you kind of like to highlight a little bit too. Again, it doesn't need to be anything major for information either, or if you've had any international experience, travel experience, it's good for us to know. And then if you are applying to any other post-secondary institutions again being any form of university, college, trade college, you name it, you can list it there. And again, just one more reminder, this is all optional too. So if you are just looking to continue on in the application process and you don't necessarily want or feel the need to include that information for the time being, you can leave this entire section essentially blank and you can continue on the application process. If we needed additional information from you, then we'll be sure to contact you. So if there's something that you feel like you might be missing, don't worry, we have your back. So after submitting your application, this is what the portal generally kind of looks like following completion of a submitted application. So I can highlight a couple of things here. So this, as I can kind of almost highlight with my cursor here, would just be the percent completion of your application. So in the example of the ambiguous student included here, they are 100% complete when it comes to the actual required information within their application. They're welcome to review it. They're welcome to make any kind of changes. If there's any kind of typo or anything like that that needs revision, there's certainly an opportunity for it. And then there's actually a checklist that we would recommend you keep an eye on the side of that progress bar. So generally for a lot of students, it will be looking for a transcript from, in this case, a high school. If you mentioned that you attended a previous university or college, then we might be, an X next to the check mark from that if we're looking for that kind of transcript as well. And then also it'll indicate if your application fee has been received yet. That being said, it is a busier time of year. So if you have had your application completed and if you've had any form of transcript or document sent, bear in mind, it may take a few days for that to reflect on your profile. So if you had your application sent or if you had your transcript sent in, let's say at 4:31 p.m. This afternoon, then it might not reflect by 4:32 p.m. on your application portal. So don't worry about that on your checklist. But if you do have any questions about your checklist or something's not reflected, then you can always keep in touch with us as well. Once your checklist is complete, I would recommend you keep an eye on your portal for your notice of decision. So the good news about that is that right within the same portal here that we were just on, this will be where you can actually find out firsthand the status of your admission status. So if you keep an eye on your portal for your notice of decision, what's really nice is you can actually access what could be a future letter of admission, a letter of acceptance, right within the portal. It makes it very easy to screenshot. It makes it very easy to kind of circulate among family, friends, having some bragging rights and whatnot too. That being said too, depending on the email that you would have used to create your application portal, you'll also be notified through that email as well. So definitely keep an eye on your inbox after you submitted your application. Assuming good news is coming for a lot of students over the next few months, you'll be getting a congratulatory letter of some form like that, where it will kind of be highlighted by our wonderful director of admissions, Michelle Wright, and just kind of providing a couple ideas of next steps. There's a couple of more informative pieces that are included on this, but for information purposes, those aren't included. But for many of you, you'll probably get to see what that looks like firsthand in a short amount of time. So a couple of things that might be common questions, and even though we do have a couple of questions, which I'll get to here in the next few moments, a couple of questions that we can answer for the time being. First one being, how long does it take to apply? I'll be honest, in the same amount of time that I've gone through that walkthrough, you likely could have completed it if you are a pretty quick typer. So a lot of our students might require as little as 10 minutes to complete the actual required information component of the online application. If you're taking your time, if you want to provide a little more information in the long answer or in the written answer component, then it might take 25 to 30 minutes. But that being said, it's shorter than your average TV show or your average podcast or what have you to complete an application to St. Thomas. It's just that simple. Another question that we often see is, if I don't meet the minimum admission average for early admission, or if I don't meet a certain requirement of early admission, do I have to reapply when I first receive my first term grades following, let's say, completion of your first term of high school or secondary? Honestly, you would be surprised the amount of students that might not necessarily receive an offer of admission from the get-go. So the good news is that it happens to plenty of students. So it's nothing to take personal. It's nothing to feel down about. It's a very common part of the process for a number of students. If you are offered admission too, that is wonderful. A lot of our students are offered early admission, but it's a process that's different from everyone. And if you walk around on a campus, you would have no idea who received early admission, who received regular admission, or anything in between. So what will happen is, if you aren't meeting the minimum admission average for early admission, we'll actually be in touch. Our office is very student by student in helping accommodate and meeting those kind of gaps and helping manage anything to ensure that you can get back on track for admission, with still plenty of time to stay on top of scholarship and bursary applications to ensure that if you're looking to stay in residence, we can get you on board for that as well. But overall, we can absolutely keep you on track to beginning and staying with the deadlines, no different than anybody else. So you don't necessarily have to reapply. What we'll be looking for mostly is just ensuring that once you do receive your first term transcript and grades, that those get to us. So the sooner that we can see that, the sooner that we can provide insights and help on ensuring that you're still on track to joining us here at St. Thomas. So where do you get your transcript, and where exactly do you send them? I know it might depend from school to school. Some larger schools, there might be a transcript request portal that you can fill out online, or even a form that you can fill out at your school office to send to St. Thomas. But generally, if you happen to go to an office area, an administrative area of your high school or your secondary school, if you have a counselor, whether it be a career or university counselor, or whether it be a guidance counselor, that might be your good first step to take. If they don't have the ability to send that to us, then they surely know how to get it to us one way or another. Again, for sending that, that would just be to admissions@stu.ca. And if you do need a fax number, if you need a mailing address or anything like that too, we're happily able to provide that as well. A definitely common question right now too is, I'm attending the open house. Can I apply for free? The good news is yes, all attendees of our open house, which I think is coming up in about 20 days, maybe less now. So if you are interested, then that's certainly something to keep on your calendar and your personal schedule, if you will. But yes, we are offering students waived application fees for those that are attending the upcoming open house event. Moving forward a little bit to awards, so that kind of looking at the scholarship and bursary side of things, we'll highlight that a little bit and what that step looks like. And we'll also go into the Q&A following that, and then we'll begin to kind of wind down for this evening. So generally speaking, what are scholarships and bursaries? I know those two terms might be awfully foreign to people if they've never heard of them before, if they've never really understood what those means. But in short, they're awards, and they're awards that can recognize students for a variety of things. And those awards are monetary, that can go directly toward your tuition and fees. So in short, it can really help manage some of the expenses that are often associated with post-secondary education. So fortunately, St. Thomas offers a variety of awards, and that includes, scholarships not only for high academic achievement, but there's also bursaries for students that might have a demonstrated financial need. It's certainly a valid point right now that financial need is present. We have a huge variety of students that are coming in from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds, but they can all excel, and they all have excelled here at St. Thomas, so not to worry about that. We also have other awards for students that are balancing, not only a pretty strong academic performance, but they're also managing a number of things in their free time. They might be involved in clubs, societies, athletic teams, different groups, student council, and different leadership ventures like that. They might volunteer in their free time. They might have community involvements, community achievements. They might be affiliated with local groups in their community. Really, they might be working part-time. They might just be living a busy lifestyle. And those are all things that we can actually have the ability to recognize. So STU offers hundreds of entrance scholarships that can range in value from 400 Canadian dollars toward your tuition up to $96,000 over 4 years. And those are offered predominantly to high school students that are beginning as incoming students in the Bachelor of Arts program too. For future thinking too, if you think that being an incoming student is your only opportunity to explore any kind of scholarship and bursary opportunities, there are current student scholarships and bursaries that have a tighter range in value, I would say, but certainly allow for plenty of money to be left on the table when it comes to the world of awards for tuition and fees. Bursaries, however, are a bit different. So bursaries are open to students that are for full-time admission to the first year of the Bachelor of Arts program, and generally applying on the basis of their high school records, or even as adult learners. So STU offers a generous variety of bursaries as well. In financial need, more so, that can kind of range in value from 500 Canadian dollars up to 3,000 Canadian dollars. More often than not, for bursaries, a bit different than scholarships, which can generally run years. Most bursaries tend to be a one-time award. One really nice component that I know varies from location to location is kind of the daunting idea of how many applications will I need to complete to be considered for scholarships, for bursaries, for awards. The great news about St. Thomas is that answer is one. So if you are looking to be considered for almost every single scholarship that we offer, you will only have to submit a single scholarship application. That doesn't mean that you have to tediously complete letter after letter and component after component. We'll do the work on our end to kind of browse which potential avenues might work for you in the scholarship pool. That being said, that also applies for bursaries as well. So it would be a single application, and we would consider you for all of the bursaries that we do offer. So the overall steps to apply for scholarships and bursaries, for context, if I haven't mentioned this clearly enough, obviously you do need to be offered admission to St. Thomas University to be considered for a future scholarship and bursary application as well. So what is really nice about that actually is similar to the application process. Let's see if I can get there. Yep, right back here. So again, this is your application portal. The really nice thing is for a student that is offered admission is that you'll be able to find the next step section of your portal right here at the top of your toolbar. And that's actually where you can begin and again, save in progress your scholarship and your bursary application. So it's all housed in one really convenient location. So if you visit that back in your applicant portal, that's the easiest way to get started. Overall, afterward, kind of get informed, get some information about it. Obviously, we're doing what we can to inform you in sessions like these, but there will be more sessions to come where you can kind of dive a bit deeper into some of the intricacies of effective scholarship and bursary applications. So that could be attending one of our scholarship information webinars, which should be running in different varieties over the course of the fall and even early this winter. You can attend an open house, whether it be this fall or this winter, and ask your questions there and attend some sessions that might provide a little more insight on that. You can always meet with an admissions counselor. I feel like that's never said enough. We are here to help whatever step of the process you're in, whether that is getting an application started for admission or whether that's getting an application started for your scholarship and bursaries. That's what we're here for. We're happy to help. If you do want to book anything like that too, you can always visit stu.ca/dates, and we can certainly go from there as well. So when applying for scholarships, bursaries, financial aid, the deadline that you should keep in mind for this is March 1st, 2023. Now, I know that seems like a pretty fair distance and a pretty safe distance away, but I'll be honest, it does sneak up on you. Time does fly. So you're welcome to submit that application early. You can even submit that as early as this week if you've already been offered admission to the university. So generally what goes into a scholarship application is the following documents kind of listed there. So a personal statement letter, a resume that's kind of highlighted your experiences, your accomplishments, your accolades, your context, if you will, as well as a letter of reference. So that could be from a teacher that you've worked really closely with on a number of initiatives in and outside of the classroom. That could be a guidance counselor, that could be a principal, your school community, someone that can really kind of be your best cheerleader almost. A bursary letter, if you are considering applying for bursaries and being considered for bursaries, that's another letter that you can include as well. And then an updated academic transcript. So even if you apply for a scholarship and a bursary, let's say before the new year, before when the typical academic term wraps up, feel free to provide an updated copy of your transcript as well. More so for international students only, but proof of funding is also required. And then US citizens, if there are any Americans joining us this evening, they also must submit the FAFSA, if they're applying for bursaries. And the STU code is G06682. And I know that might not be the easiest thing to memorize. So if you are an American student and you are considering an application, you can certainly just keep in touch, and we're happy to provide that info on a rolling basis. A couple of people might also be wondering about, just general tips and tricks for leveraging your scholarship and bursary application down the road. The first one, which I cannot emphasize strong enough, apply early. Please apply early. These awards are designated for our students. 85% of our incoming students were awarded at least one form of award, whether it be a scholarship or a bursary or even multiple. So apply early. These are available. These are on the table. The sooner you apply, the sooner you could hear back with an offer. So if you've already been offered admission, if you're looking to be offered admission sooner rather than later, that is wonderful. But you can absolutely get started on a scholarship bursary application at your earliest convenience. I promise you it's worth the time and it's worth the commitment. Really, it doesn't hurt either, but it's almost similar to a job application, but you can have someone proofread your letters for your spelling, your grammar, and capitalization. You certainly wouldn't want any kind of any messy or sloppy grammar to be the difference between you being highly considered and moderately considered for any kind of award. Oh, this is a really good one. So please spell out your acronyms. We have students that are joining us not only from around the eastern coast of Canada, but we have students joining us from around Canada, from around the rest of the world, frankly. I already mentioned that over 10% of our population is made up of international students. With that, acronyms can mean very different things from very different parts of the world. So if you're part of a club or society that even in your home region, your home country, your hometown, seems like a very commonly spoken acronym about some kind of group or involvement or organization, we might not have any familiarity with that. So please make sure that you spell out your acronyms. So in this case, STU is obviously what is very commonly referred to as St. Thomas University, but making an example out of this, always at least say St. Thomas University more than one time so we have a point of reference of knowing if an acronym is the same kind of correlation. Give your reference some time too. So for your reference letter and a scholarship application, if you're considering an early scholarship application, that's wonderful. If you're also thinking of applying for scholarships and bursaries closer to the March 1st deadline, that's fine too. But please give your reference some time. These are more often than not professionals that are doing their own accomplishments and completing their own tasks on a daily basis too. So out of mindfulness to them, it might be worthwhile to collect the letter slightly before the deadline too, and it gives you a little bit of time to check things out and proofread on their end as well. Be proud of your accomplishments. I'll be honest, there's very few times where people are told, don't be humble. This is probably one of the few opportunities where it is absolutely okay not to be humble about your achievements, your accomplishments, whether that be academically, whether that be on a volunteer, a work basis, a community basis, an extracurricular basis, an athletic basis. So take initiative in your initiative, if that makes sense. If you have been the strong lead of a group or an initiative, wherever you might be joining us from, talk those up, brag those up. We're absolutely happy to know that you're a team player, but if you want to be a little less humble and honestly speak to the truth of how much you led an initiative, or if this was an idea that was strictly your idea, you don't have to say, oh, this was our idea that we came up with for some kind of initiative we've launched. Brag it up. If you need any insight on how to brag it up, you can absolutely find time to meet with an admissions counselor to find a way of how to brag appropriately on something like a scholarship letter. And then ultimately be authentic and be honest as well. We want to know about your initiative, your drive, your accomplishment, your work ethic, as much as your accomplishments. So this is a really great opportunity for you to include a little bit of your own personal voice, your own writing style, if you will, a little bit in these letters, in these components as well. And honesty is your best policy too. So by all means, we want to know about your accolades, but that shouldn't be a case of you going to drastic boundaries of kind of overreaching on what your accolades have been and what your accomplishments have been as well. I realized that that was certainly an overload of information, and we do have a number of questions coming in. So we'll take the remaining 9 minutes to kind of highlight some of our questions before we wind down here. So if anyone does need to make note or screenshot or take note of anything that they've already seen here today, or if they need to connect further, first of all, you can begin an application at any point. You can even begin just creating an application portal and a username and a password if that's kind of an easier first step for you. But to do that, you can totally check out stu.ca/apply2023. Again, that's just stu.ca/apply2023. With that, we're happy to keep in touch too with any kind of inquiries. So if you need to email about anything, you can email us at admissions@stu.ca. Or if you're an international student or currently studying somewhere abroad and you want to keep in touch with a similar staff, again, it's just our staff. It can be admissions@stu.ca, or it can even be international@stu.ca as well. And we'll be happy to manage your questions and provide some pretty thoughtful answers as well. If you're looking for any kind of information about the university in general, stu.ca is probably a good start. But that being said, we are going to take a second here and review some of these questions. So, okay, so the first question we do have here is, English is my first language. Would the test still be required of me to do? So this might depend. What we often look for is if we have students that are from international locations that the primary language there is in English, then that's certainly something that historically we've been able to review and then waive the English language proficiency test for certain international students. That being said, even if you're at a country or studying somewhere where the first language might not be primarily English, but the language of instruction at your secondary school or your high school was actually in English, pending receipt of those academic transcripts and that validation process, more often than not, we're also able to waive those English test requirements as well. That being said, again, it's a student by student basis. So if you did have any particular questions about that, or if it needed additional attention, you can absolutely keep in touch with us. So thank you for your question. We have another question here as well. So if I'm an international student, should I apply through the Common App? You're certainly welcome to apply through the Common App. I know a number of students that have now been on St. Thomas for a couple of years that have submitted their application and applied through Common App. That being said, we're welcoming applications from around the world on our actual STU website as well. So if you visit stu.ca/apply2023, whether you're just around the corner from our campus here in Fredericton, or whether you're in the heart of a neighborhood anywhere in the world, you can absolutely complete your application online right through the STU website. So thank you so much for your question. Let's see, we have a number of questions here. Oh, we have another question here. So it's regarding kind of scholarship chances and opportunity here. So does difficulty of courses, examples for students wondering about this might be a level 1 or IB courses help your scholarship chances? In a lot of ways, they actually can. So again, looking at the academic kind of component of a lot of our merit-based scholarships, if you have kind of gone down the path of more academic rigor and that sort of pathway, then those are all things that we actually do take into consideration when reviewing something like an academic-based scholarship. So if you do have strong performance and a history of strong performance in level 1 courses and IB courses and AP courses, those actually can help influence a positive scholarship result. So thank you for your question on that. We have another question, and this is certainly a pretty good question at that too. Can I apply for residence now? I've been accepted already. Do you have to pay the residence deposit to apply for residence? Not yet for the residence deposit side of things, but yes, you're actually available to apply for residence now. That would be in the next step section of your applicant portal. So similar to where your scholarship and bursary application would be located, you can and should be able to begin an application for residence. That being said, if you do have any questions about the residence application, we'll be exploring that over the next couple of months, not only on campus-based events, but virtual events dedicated strictly to ensuring that it makes for an easy transition to residence too. So if you do have any questions about the residence application, you can definitely keep in touch with us. And if we can't provide the best answer for it, then we'll be sure to find it for you, or at least connect with the right folks. All right, let's see. We have a number of questions here, actually. My good. Okay. Okay, thank you, folks. We're getting some questions here. So we have someone mentioning that their transcripts and certain certificates are in French. In certain cases, thank you for letting us know, depending on what we might require, we might need a translation of certain transcripts if they are coming from different kind of states and different kind of backgrounds. But again, that's something that we can invalidate once a student is checking in with us on that kind of basis. So thank you. Oh, another good question here. Should I wait until February to apply once I have my first semester final grades? Absolutely not. In the kindest way possible, absolutely not. If you are considering an application to St. Thomas, feel free to apply at your earliest convenience. You certainly do not have to wait until January for your first semester final grades. For a lot of students, early admission can be based on their performance in their grade 11 year. And maybe if they even have certain grade 12 courses on the go, not only in grade 11, but things that we can work with on that front for review. You should absolutely complete an application at your earliest convenience when you wish. You do not have to wait until February. If anything, I can't emphasize that enough. The sooner you apply to the university, the sooner you can apply for things like scholarships and bursaries as well. We do not necessarily need a certain component of grade 12 marks to be underway. It's part of our process, but we're very commonly capable of performing early acceptance offers for students that still are in progress of their grade 12 years. So yep, feel free to apply at your earliest convenience. Let's see, we have a couple of other. We have another question here. So just out of curiosity, how long does acceptance take after application? So that's a good question. So generally, it can take anywhere from 3 to 5 business days for an application review and for a decision to be made to be completed. So 3 to 5 business days could be, if you began an application and submitted it on Sunday evening or Monday morning, your decision could be ready as early as Wednesday, as early as that Friday. In many cases, depending on the amount of applications that our office might be working with, we might actually be able to have a decision even quicker than the 3 to 5 business day timeline. If it is beyond that timeline by any means, you're welcome to keep in touch and check in about the status of your application too. But yeah, the offer can generally be made after everything is submitted. So that also includes not only your required information, but an application review can't actually begin until we have all of the supporting documents as well. So we would require all of the transcripts that are listed on your checklist. We would require your application fee to be paid. And depending on other kind of documents and tests aside, we might also need those. So your checklist does need to be fully green, fully complete before we're able to begin that review process. But then a student can expect the decision in 3 to 5 business days. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, we have another question that just came in exactly like that. So 2 people that asked the same question. So thank you so much for that. Another person wondering here. So just to be clear, first you apply, and then when I receive an offer of admission, I can apply for a scholarship. Yes. So focus on the application for admission first, exactly. And then following, hopefully, an offer of admission, that should be your green light to access the next steps and begin an application for early scholarship and bursary opportunities as well. Now we are running low on time here, folks, so I will be sure to answer as many of these as possible, but out of respect to our folks for joining us time, I'll answer as many more questions as I can and then follow with a couple of next steps. So if your question hasn't been answered, or if your question hasn't been answered clearly this evening, folks, I will be sure to provide additional ways of keeping in touch after this session, and we can keep the conversation going pretty immediately. So let's see here. Will a copy of this be on our website? To my understanding, yes, our recordings have been housed on the stu.ca website. There will be an email that goes around to all of our attendees for how to keep in touch, how to find a copy of this recording. But that being said, too, if you need more of an individualized check-in session, then you can absolutely find time to make a virtual or an in-person meeting with an admissions counselor if you need to talk through a couple of more things as well. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we have a student wondering if their first language is Spanish, can a teacher send the letter of reference in Spanish?
Preferably, we would like to have it at least translated. The sentiment can certainly be there. And if anything, they can probably speak to many of your accolades. But if a quick translation isn't too much trouble, then that would probably be optimal for our scholarship and bursary review committee as well. Okay, perfect. And we do, let's see here. Could a scholarship ever be downgraded? Actually, that's a very good question. So this might be the last question that we have time for this evening, but generally it's a bit of a different process. I know that people are wondering about different things and logistics and intricacies of what a scholarship and bursary award could look like. Typically when a scholarship is actually awarded to a student, the actual terms of maintaining and maintaining that scholarship offering is actually a part of the letter. So the terms and conditions are almost included directly with the actual scholarship offering letter. So if a student can't meet a certain grade point requirement that's required to maintain the scholarship, more often than not, depending on the scholarship, a student would just be forfeiting those scholarship funds for the coming academic term or academic year, depending on what the intricacies of their scholarship details are. That being said, too, there are opportunities to kind of check in, and we have resources actually on campus that can help ensure students looking to keep whatever their scholarship offering is, really to make sure that they remain on track and that they can keep their scholarship for years to come to keep supporting their way along. That being said, I apologize. As more questions, let's see here. I'll take one more question just out of tight time frame here. Oh, okay. So the student is actually clarified. They were wondering to know if a scholarship offer can be downgraded before they begin their studies here at St. Thomas. So if one was kind of given an early scholarship, and if there was any kind of influx or change in their okay, thank you so much for clarifying. The long and the short of it is actually no. Once a student is offered a scholarship offer, no. Whatever their scholarship offering is, whatever their bursary offering is, they are more than welcome to be entitled to that. That being said, another commonly asked question too, if a student is awarded, let's say an early scholarship, are they still eligible to be considered for another scholarship or even a bursary on top of that? Absolutely. So if you're awarded, let's say an early scholarship prior to the March 1st deadline, you kind of do some tweaking and any kind of management of any updates or anything you want to keep us updated on new additions to a scholarship or bursary application, you still could be eligible for additional scholarship or bursary funds on top of that. Very often, a number of our students have actually been recipients of a combination of multiple scholarships or a scholarship and a bursary. So really one is not going to be the only offering that you're ever going to have if you are considering that kind of process. So in which case I realize that we've already kind of run past time a little bit too. So if you do have questions, then stay tuned here momentarily. There will be opportunities to pretty much just pass your question along and we'll be sure to answer it as early as tomorrow, to be honest. So if you are curious to learn a little bit about opportunities to check out campus for yourself, whether it be in person or virtual, we do have a wonderful campus tour program. So all of our tours generally consist of a check-in meeting with myself or one of my many wonderful colleagues, following a quick check-in meeting to kind of figure out your ambitions, your aspirations, answering your questions, obviously. All of our tours are actually provided by current students here of St. Thomas with plenty of program experience. More often than not, they've dabbled in a variety of subject areas. So if you're wondering about certain classes, about the campus environment, about getting involved, about what the classroom experience is kind of like, about the services, about living in Fredericton, they are so happy to speak to you about it. They're some of the most wonderful people we have here at St. Thomas. So if you are interested in booking a tour, you can absolutely give us a call and check in on that front. That being said, you can also book online by visiting stu.ca/campus tour or by sending us an email at tours@stu.ca and we can go from there. For those of you wondering about additional opportunities to check out, other events, other virtual events, other in-person events, there are more than enough opportunities to kind of keep in touch that way as well. So one of the many virtual events beginning this evening is one of the many virtual events that are to come. So our in-person fall open house is actually October 22nd. If you are within a reasonable traveling distance of the city of Fredericton or the St. Thomas University campus, we would love to have you back on campus. It's certainly been a while since we've been able to offer an open house in person with fewer limitations and more opportunities. So we would be so happy to welcome you to campus, you and your family, your friends, any kind of supporters that you need. We'd be happy to have you. And then if you need to check out other events as well, you can totally visit stu.ca/dates or even stu.ca/stubound to find our upcoming catalog of events. We do have social media for those of you that are curious. So if you are looking to kind of stay up to date on current events and even upcoming dates and deadlines for St. Thomas University, you can give us a follow or a like on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, if you need to kind of get some visual components for those of you that are already using social media as is. That being said, we are a touch over time, so I want to thank you so much for making the time to joining us this evening. If you do happen to have additional questions, you are more than welcome to pose your questions to us via international@stu.ca if you are an international student, or admissions@stu.ca. If you do happen to have any questions, you can do that. We also have a chat function right on the stu.ca website where we'd be happy to answer your questions as well. But this certainly does not have to be the last time that we stay in touch. So that being said, depending on where you might be joining us from, again, I hope you have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it might be. But nonetheless, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to keeping in touch.